Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on Connecting the Dots. We are so excited to have you. We've both been following you for a while now on Instagram. I sent your page to Melissa when we both started trying to, not drink as much or be sober curious, as people say. But we like to start off these conversations with an icebreaker. So, what is something that you're reading, watching, or listening to?
So I'm currently reading Switch on Your Brain by Dr. Caroline Leaf. She is a neuroscientist and she talks about how your brain has all these neural pathways and how your brain is very plastic. And so it's a very interesting one to learn about, like how your brain works, but also how like your thought processes like dictate how your brain is shaped and formed, and the beliefs that you have and how you can actually change them.
That is so cool.
Sounds really interesting.
Yeah, she's a very interesting person. I think she has a podcast as well, but she has several books all about like the brain and then your thought process, but also about like your lifestyle habits and how they can affect your brain as well.
Wow,
Awesome.
that's fascinating.
We'll have to check it out.
Yeah, so can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your healing journey and how that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Salia. I am the curator and founder of Holistic Cocktails. My health journey actually started about 5 to 8 years ago. So I had really, really bad eczema, something that I've always kind of dealt with growing up. And then finally, as an adult, I'm like, okay, I'm an adult. I can figure this out by myself. I don't have to rely on my parents. And so I kind of like looked at like, okay, like what was I eating and how was that affecting me? And so I started changing up my food to be, organic, clean, all the things, right? And it was helping a little bit, but it wasn't getting me to where I wanted to be. So then I was like, okay, so what's next? And so in my journey, that became clean beauty. And so I worked in clean beauty for about 5 years after that. So I learned about like what we put on our skin, how it affects us. And for a long time, that really worked. And then it didn't. And so I was like, okay, so what's next? And then I started learning about, contact dermatitis. And so that's what I had. And so that basically means that anything that has harsh chemicals or that is very irritating can cause me to have an eczema rash. So I was like, okay, so what causes eczema rashes besides, beauty, food? Okay, so homeware. So my linens, my detergents, everything home. And so that got me into becoming an eco-conscious interior designer. So I was that for about 3 years, and I learned about like how basically our environment affects our skin, our mental health. And then everything was great. I was eczema free for a very long time. And then COVID happened. And during COVID, nothing outwardly changed. Like I was still eating the same foods. I was still, like sleeping in the same bed, things like that. But then my eczema came back really, really bad. And I said, okay, what is it this time? Like there's not much else. And then I realized it was mental health and stress. And that was a huge indicator for me. And I said, okay. And I'm someone that deals with anxiety, depression, and it's just kind of there, but it's never really hindered me. And so I was like searching for answers, like, okay, like how can I boost my mood? How can I mitigate my stress? I know the things about like journaling, meditation, all the things, but like there's sometimes where you're so anxious or so depressed where you just can't do it. And it's really hard. And I remember listening to a podcast. One of my friends was on it and she talked about supplements. And she was basically saying how like she's a huge advocate for like natural supplements and things like that. And a friend of hers said like, oh, like I don't need supplements. And her response was, you don't know how much more you can feel until you do have supplements. And that was kind of like, huh, like I wonder, because I was the type of person as well, like, oh, like you don't really need supplements, like, oh, you can just get it from your food. But we all know that food is not grown how it is meant to anymore, that the nutrition and bioavailability that you get from food now is very different. And a lot of times you aren't getting exactly what you need from food. And that's why we have supplements now, and herbs and tinctures and all these things. And so I kind of took her theory and kind of played with it. And I said, okay, if I want supplements, how am I going to get that into my diet? Like, I don't want to be sitting there like, like all the healthy people, or my mom growing up, she would just take handfuls of just supplements growing up. And I did not want to be that person, because for one, I don't like pills. It's just something that didn't really interest me. And I was like, what's a fun way to like add more supplements into my system and add more herbs into my system that actually is like enjoyable. And so at the time I was doing something for San Diego locals where it was called Meet Friends San Diego. And so it was a way to kind of bring the community together, especially for people that just moved to the area. But obviously with COVID, you can't really meet people. There are no events. And so I said, okay, so if I want to get supplements into my system, and I want to have like a way to like bring people together still, I think that maybe adding it to drinks would be a fun way to do that. And I've always loved mixology. It was something that I did like very, very early into the working force. And so I just started drinking, or like making mocktails and then adding supplements in it. And so I also knew like how herbs and certain supplements worked for your body. So I knew that some of them can boost your mood. Some of them can relax you, holistically. Some of them can balance your hormones. And there's so many different options. And it's like, why aren't we doing this? Why are people gravitating towards alcohol, which is a depressant, versus something that is actually going to better you short and long term? It's going to give you those, body buzz feelings that you would want. And it's also going to help you long term, because eventually the more that you have them, it's going to balance out, different issues that you have in your body. And I just kind of took that idea and ran with it. And especially in the health and wellness world, like, just because something is labeled, like on the cleaner side. So for example, like non-alcoholic doesn't mean it's clean. Just like how we say, or how we see non-GMO doesn't mean it's clean, or, all these different things, like everything in the health and wellness world, there's always like the green label doesn't actually mean anything. It's marketing. And so it's like, okay, so knowing what I know now, how can I help educate others to understand what is greenwashed versus what is actually going to be beneficial for your body? And I've also noticed, like, for one, it's helped me mentally a ton. My eczema is gone. I don't deal with eczema at all anymore. I think the only time when I've had a flare up was like I stopped making drinks for a little bit because I had to take a break. And my mental health and my skin just went through havoc, basically. And so I'm like, okay, I need to go back, because I've noticed like my body now needs, or really utilizes, those supplements and herbs that I was taking on a regular basis.
That is so awesome. And it's very relatable, because I feel like a lot of people, as they start their health journeys, they have like one area that they start to get into, whether that's exercise, whether that's diet, whether that's clean beauty, like they find an in somewhere and then continue on like you did, like, okay, this worked for a little, but what's next? Or just out of curiosity, they're like, okay, like if there's cleaner foods, is there also cleaner cleaning products? People start and then keep going. So I love how your journey was, very organic, and not, okay, I just decided to be healthy one day and did 1,000,001 things. Like, no, it took time. You built your skills, you built your interest. And I think it's fascinating how you also, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you like base your careers off of what you were learning?
Yeah, absolutely. I lived in Silicon Valley for a little bit and I was like, man, this corporate world is not for me. So I basically freelanced everything else after that. And so I'm like, okay, I want to learn about clean beauty. Her name is Amanda from the Organic Bunny. She kind of like helped me and I harassed the crap out of her. I'm like, can I please work for you? Is there anything that I can do to like work for you? And it took her a year. And finally, a year later, she's like, hey, like, are you still interested? I want to bring you on. And so we worked together for a while, and she kind of taught me like about clean beauty, what to look out for, and she herself has a lot of like health issues that she deals with. And so I kind of learned about like, okay, like certain foods, certain ingredients. And then from there, I kind of took everything that I learned and dove it into like eco-conscious interior designing, because that was something that not a lot of people were doing. They still don't do. And there's a lot of misunderstanding with it and a lot of mystery with it. But at the same time, it's also very costly because of how inaccessible it is. And so it wasn't easy to reach the type of people that I wanted to help. Like I can help people on a granular scale, but I wanted to help people on a masses. And I feel like something that basically holistic cocktails, if you think about cost to cost, it's basically the same. Like when people say like, oh, the products are expensive or the ingredients are expensive. Okay, well think about how much a bottle of Patron is. Think about how much, different alcohol is. It can get very expensive. Or think about how much you pay to go out to drink. You know, I pay where I live, it is more expensive. So I pay like $8 to $10 for a mocktail versus my friends are paying upwards of $20 for a cocktail. So you have to find a good middle ground.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, before we get more into the details about the cocktails, do you have any tips to share for listeners on the eco-conscious interior designing and what changes they can make in their home that could help? Because honestly, me personally, I've been dealing with also some skin issues as I've been healing and detoxing. I've switched to a lot of different products and stuff, and the skincare and the food too, but I'm still learning. And I think that it's interesting that like linens and all different like fabrics people don't really know about.
Yeah, absolutely. So for one, I'm going to say the easiest thing that you can do is switch your detergent. Switch your detergent to something that is clean, like actually clean. Like do your research on different ones, ingredients, how they affect you, and then from there, that's when you go into like, okay, linens, organic cotton. Try to stick with more natural fabrics. And you don't, me personally, I don't like to go for like polyesters or even like upcycled polyester, because for one, it is still microplastics. When you wash it, the debris washes into our oceans. It also is, it causes issues with our hormones, especially for women. If you're wearing polyester delicates or panties, underwear or bras, things like that, it's touching your very delicate areas and your skin absorbs different chemicals. Also, like, be careful of cotton because it is heavily pesticide and sprayed. But yeah, I would say like packed clothing is like one of the most affordable organic clothing brands that I've found. But also like your bed. So if you can switch to, I would say like step one that I did was switching out like my linen. So like my bed sheet, my pillowcases to organic cotton. And then you can move up and do like pillows and try to do like latex or, like poly or organic cotton filled. And then your duvet cover, those can be linens. Linens help your skin breathe a little bit better. Same with cotton. Bamboo, you have to do a lot of research because there are some bamboo companies. To get the bamboo fiber from an actual bamboo to fabric, it uses a solvent. So it goes through like a chemical bath. It basically melts down the bamboo and then it restructures it to be threads. And so some of them say that they're non-toxic and that they get fully washed away. I personally just tend to stay away just in case, because at the end of the day, you never really know. And yeah, I would say like those are the main things. Also, like your towels, making sure that they're like more natural. And like I say, like if you cannot switch to organic fully, like try to opt for linen, cotton if it's like absolutely a necessity. It's better if there are options of plant-based dyes, because then it won't have heavy dyes in it. But basically, like start where you can. I know it can be expensive. So what I did and my partner did is we budgeted. So like we literally had a budget of like, okay, this is what we want to switch to. This is how much it's going to cost. You know, some months like, okay, like we're going to have to save up for like 3 months worth of budget to buy the next purchase. Even like your mattress, your couches, things that get a little bit more costly. But at the end of the day, it's going to help you. Also getting like an air purifier. I know that Air Doctor is very popular as well. So different things to like help filter out like the air. I saw this one where it's like if you open up, you know, new furniture or like new bedding, or sometimes like the throw blankets and throw pillows, sometimes it will off gas, so it will have the fumes. So setting it out in the sunlight for at least 24 hours will really help cut down on the smell and things like that. And also making sure you wash things right away.
That is so helpful. And I'm literally wearing packed biker shorts as we speak. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I love packed. And I love how easily accessible it is. And like, yes, there are some pieces that are more expensive, but they have sales on all the time. So there's truly no real excuse. I mean, like, if you are on a budget, I understand, but save up, make the budget, make the time, because at the end of the day, you only have one body. And once it's gone, it is really, really hard to get it back to where you want it to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I took down a lot of notes and I've never heard of pact before today. So I'm going to look at that because I've been noticing, yeah, as the skin flare-ups happen, like certain fabrics do make it feel worse versus better. So I've been kind of looking into what things I can start to switch out. So thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. I know it's your skin journey, especially if you're very conscious of it, it can be very frustrating to deal with. So I understand.
Yeah. Well, now I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about some of the mocktails that you created that helped you heal from your eczema, and like
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
makes you good.
So for me, my number one thing is knowing that my eczema flare up the most recent time was because of stress. Like, okay, so what can I do to mitigate stress? And so at first I looked for singular herbal tinctures. So I had ashwagandha, rhodiola, passion flower, CBD, and those are like singular things that you can do to add to your system. Um, and then after that, I'm like, man, like there are some really incredible herbal brands that are made or formulated by herbalists, so they know what they're doing. So I'm just going to go for their blends. And so, for example, like Organic Olivia has mood juice, peace juice. Those are incredible for helping balance your mood and your hormones. Wish Garden Herbs is another one that I really love. They have, I think it's called Deep Stress, which helps with your adrenals. And so finding, I think like the easiest thing to do is like find blends that you really love and you really feel gravitated to and stick with those, because most likely like your body is craving it for a certain reason. And it's kind of like, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, like in the realm of muscle testing, where like your body will gravitate towards something it needs. And then if it doesn't want something or if it doesn't need something, it'll kind of like mitigate away from it. And so like testing like, okay, so is this going to help with my hormones? Is this going to help with my mood? And at the end of the day, like your hormones dictate your mood because of like your cortisol levels and things like that, your stress response. And so going from there, I'm like, okay, so after that we have, you know, skin. And so skin's very important for me. You know, like I started my journey in skincare. And so adding collagen, that was also really great. Hibiscus, there are certain like blends as well that help with like skin that really are great. Like Wooden Spoon Herbs has a clear complexion one, or I think it's called Light Ray, and they have different ones as well. And then after that, I kind of went into, okay, like what would people drink for? So they either drink to go out or they drink to unwind. And so we have like, okay, if you're gonna go out, think about like when you're going out, like you want to have good conversations, you want to meet people, you want to feel like loose and free and like not so stressed. It can be stressful to go out, especially if you're an introvert. So that's when I also started adding like ginkgo biloba or different like brain supplements to help with like conversations. Because when you think about like when you go out, like you want to make sure like your brain is sharp, especially if you're gonna want to have good conversations. And so it's like your memory, you want to make sure that you can recall what you're talking about. So, because I know for me personally, sometimes if I get nervous, I like blank out. And so I'm like, when I go out, I want to like have great conversations, but I don't want to like forget what I'm talking about because I'm so nervous. And so finding ones are like Beekeeper's Natural has like a really good bee propolis, and that helps with like your brain cognition as well. So there are tons of different ones where it helps with like different things, or even like juice shots. So Core Shots has focus fuel. And so those help with like your brain cognition, keeping you sharp, your memory. And also like, because it kind of is a stimulant for your brain, it kind of gives you energy too. And so depending on how you are, some people like caffeine, some people don't, depends on how your body reacts to it. Sometimes caffeine can help. Sometimes if it doesn't, just omit it. And so it's so flexible in what you can do. But also like if you want to unwind, have lavender, passion flower, have CBD. It kind of like relaxes your body. It removes the stress physically from your body to help you like just breathe. And so there's no real reason why it doesn't work. It just has to do with your belief system.
Totally. And also, I literally take this before every podcast interview to, just, bring that sense of calm and ease my anxiety. So I love that you brought up the peach juice.
And it's just
But
like so many ways to use different herbs. Like for some people, if you don't want to use it like as a dropper, as a spray, you can just add it to your drink and it makes it way more fun or way more available, or even like keeps you hydrated because you're drinking more too.
100%. How did you learn about all these different herbs and supplements? Did you just do research once you decided, okay, I need to, learn to manage my stress and fix this eczema? Or have you kind of always learned throughout the years when you were in clean beauty and eco-friendly interior design?
I would say I learned it a lot from when I was in clean beauty, because I feel like whatever is popular in like the food realm also got really popular in the beauty realm, because people wanted to start adding it to your skincare. And it's like, okay, so why? Why are we adding certain ingredients? What do they do? Or also like especially body care, because body care is like, okay, like we want to relax your body, you're putting it on your skin, it'll help calm you down, or it'll help like give you energy. CBD was like a huge trend in like clean beauty, it still is. And so I'm like, okay, like if you can add CBD, what else can you add? And so also like in my journey, like even though I worked primarily in beauty and in design, I also learned and followed like a lot of doctors. So people say like social media is bad, it's bad, whatever. It's all about how you curate your feed, like if you're gonna follow influencers that wear bikinis all the time and make you feel like crap, or follow like TMZ, gossip. Of course, it's not going to do any good. It's going to be, like stressful. Versus if you curate it to be like, okay, I'm going to follow doctors that share a ton of free education. I'm going to follow like certain brands that their mission not only is their product, but also the education that they share. And so kind of like following that and then taking like whatever resonates, and then doing more research on that and seeing like kind of like where the wormhole goes with that.
That is so cool. And I can relate because I have like a personal Instagram and then a wellness Instagram. And I feel like my wellness one like always gets me so supercharged. Like I'm always like, oh my gosh, this is fascinating. I'm DMing things to Melissa all day, every day. And then my personal one, it's great to like keep up with my friends. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming.
Yeah, I actually ended up getting rid of my personal one because it was just so overwhelming. I couldn't handle it anymore. And so that's why when like people ask me, because on my holistic cocktails account, I don't follow anybody either. And people are like, oh, why not? And I'm like, I just can't handle it. And I'm like, if I want to research something, like now I know like who to like look up. And if they have any like new information, like I'll kind of go on that. Or if not, we have Google.
Yeah, no, I feel like my personal one has become more of a health one, that I follow so many health practitioners or health accounts that it just floods my feed, and it's a lot better now. But now I need to start kind of unfollowing and cleaning it up, so I'm following the accounts that I want to.
Yeah, and I think that too, it's like if you're following accounts that will help better you, educate you, inspire you, that's way better than having accounts that make you not feel great. And so, like mental health is super important, and that also has to do with it. It's like what we're consuming every day, not just on our food, our body, our drinks, but also like what we're listening to, watching, seeing every day.
100%. And you kind of already touched on this, but I'm curious, like as people do start to look for these different supplements and some of the tinctures that you've recommended and just brought up, are there ingredients in these certain beverages or supplements that people should look to avoid when they're trying to make holistic cocktails?
Yes, and this kind of goes back what I was saying about greenwashing. Every sector of health and wellness all have some type of greenwashing. And so, especially with like non-alcoholic beverages, technically it's not truly in the health realm, but because of people in the health and wellness industry, their alcohol just no longer aligns. That's the type of people that are going to that. Um, I would say artificial colors and artificial flavors are a huge one. I'm not going to name it because I think that's mean, but there is a large brand that advocates for being alternatives, but their ingredients are crap. It's just bad. So just always read the ingredients. Of course, there's like natural flavors. For me, I always double check with the company first on what their natural flavors are, just because I've learned that just because a company says natural flavors doesn't mean it's bad and doesn't mean it's good. It depends on what the company actually puts in that. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these brands are still really small indie brands. So they want to keep it proprietary so that way larger companies don't undercut them basically. And so I always try to ask them like, hey, what are in your natural flavors? If you can give me like a cut sheet of like the properties of it. Also like your citric acid, same thing. Citric acid can either be derived from black mold or it can be derived from citrus fruits. So it's just asking, being aware. And then that's why like for me, I don't share like a bajillion different non-alcoholic alternatives because I always like to ask first. And once I do ask, then that's when I'll share and post because I always want to do that research first. But there's also like some brands that have like ready-made functional drinks. So Kin is like a huge one. One that I just found out about and I'm absolutely loving is Hi-O. They call it like the float basically, or like the body buzz that you get. And so they have like functional ingredients. I think they have like ashwagandha. I think some have like rhodiola, like L-theanine, all those different ones in the drinks itself, and it tastes like really good. There's some like with CBD beverages that are really great. I would just say, like, when you're looking for a drink, for one, double check the ingredients, and then for two, like, see if it has any like functional elements in it, or like functional herbs that will like help your body. And also, like, I love to look at like the company's like mission statement, like what are they doing? Like, what is their mission? What is their goals? Like, are they aligned with me, or is this just something because it's a fad, you know?
Totally.
So if some of our listeners wanted to get started with like making their own mocktails, or finding or maybe even just like switching mixers when they're not ready to give up alcohol completely, but switching to different mixers, do you have any suggestions for people so they can kind of start switching over to healthier drinks?
Yeah, so I would say if you still do drink alcohol, I would say like hard kombucha or biodynamic wine would be your best bet. Because hard kombucha is basically just kombucha that is fermented longer, and biodynamic wine has a fraction of the sugar that is added. It has no other additives because at the end of the day, alcohol does not add their ingredient list. So there are colorings, fillerings, thickeners, gums in there, and they can cause a lot of um, gut microbiome issues. And so if you still do stick with that, like, try to do better, like try to like find healthier alternatives. But if you're going to decide to not drink at all, I would say like the easiest thing that I do is just basically add a tincture to whatever beverage I like. So for example, with like the organic Olivia peach juice or mood juice, I just take a dropper and add it to any type of drink. So I love kombucha, so I'll add it in there, and then it'll give me like the body buzz that I'm looking for, or even like CBD, just add it in. And then, like when I go out to drink or I go out to eat with friends, my thing that I like to do is I bring tinctures with me. Like I have a bag of like different tinctures, and then I'll just add it into my mocktail that I order. And it's like you still have like a fun drink. You still have something that's you've never had before besides a Shirley Temple, and it still gives you like a good like body buzz, or like I wouldn't say like a head high, but it's like you can feel like the relaxation from it.
And I feel like a lot of times that's what people are looking for when they're going out. They want the social connection and they want to relax. They want to unwind. And so if you can do that without a hangover,
Yeah,
that sounds pretty good.
yeah, absolutely. And it was funny because my sister, I gave her like she wanted to try everything. And so she's 21, mind you. So she's like, okay, like what is this gonna be like? And so I let her try Kin, Hayo, and then we also have botanic tonics, which is like a very popular one. I'll talk about that one in a minute. And she's like, oh my gosh, like mind you, she also had this all in one day. I don't recommend having it all in one day or all in like a short period of time. And she's like, wow, I feel like my body is drunk, but like my like cognition is still fun. Like I feel so good, like so happy. And she's like, is this what feeling like really drunk is? And I'm like, no, this is like way better. Don't worry about that.
That's so awesome that she has you as a guide for that. I wish I had that.
Yeah, seriously. I know.
Okay, I wish I did too. When I think about like when I was younger, how much I would drink, and I'm like, man, like no wonder I just felt terrible all the time. And I'm like, now I'm like, ugh, I can't even stand the smell anymore.
We were just talking about how we feel like Melissa and I went to college together. And so we were talking about how we feel like we just destroyed our bodies in college.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was
Seriously.
like lots of drinking because like school is only from Monday to Thursday, so it's like you got Thursday night all the way to Sunday, and then you eat fast food because you're hungover all the time, and it's like terrible.
Yeah.
And now we're doing better, so it's good.
Heck yeah. So when you decided to stop drinking, was it received well by your friends and family? Were people so confused? Because Melissa and I we've both stopped drinking, at least for now. And we get all the things from, are you pregnant? Did you have a problem? What's wrong with you? Like, don't you just want to have fun? I could never do that. So did you experience any of the above?
So for me, I sadly am a super people pleaser. So even though I wanted to stop drinking a long time ago, I would always get peer pressured into it, even though like I knew my friends knew that I hated drinking. Like it was always the joke. Like I'd take one sip, put it down, never touch it again. And it was just like my thing. Like they always knew me for that. Or I would have other people finish my drinks for me. But it was like never like, oh, like if you don't like drinking, just don't drink. Like it was never that, sadly. And so finally, like at the beginning of this year, I'm like, okay, like I'm so done drinking. Like I don't want it. It doesn't align with me anymore. Um, I'm just gonna have to suck it up with the peer pressure. And so I would show up with my own drinks, and people, instead of saying like, oh, like why don't you like drink with us, they'd be like, what's that? What does that do? That's interesting. Like what does it feel like? And so that opened up a conversation of, instead of like, oh, like you're being lame because you're not drinking, it's like, oh, she's having her own moment with drinking just in a different way with us. That's fine. And it's like I always had something in my hand. People like never asked me like, oh, what is that? And I feel like nowadays there's so many different like beverages that it's not like everyone's drinking, you know, a Coors Light and then I just have like one different drink. Like everybody has all different types of drinks. And so like mine is just like another different label basically. And so nobody asks, nobody cares anymore. And so I haven't had pushback since doing that. And I think the number one thing is just making sure that I bring my own drinks. And, you know, like at the end of the day, like if people want to try it, like go for it. And if you don't, that's fine too. You have your other options as well. But I would say that, you know, like just knowing that I'm on a health journey, people have been like, okay, like we understand, like makes sense versus like, are you pregnant?
I have to say, most of the people who've said that to me are strangers, but I'm still like, you don't even know me. Like, what? Wild.
Yeah, I have not done that one yet. But I mean, I really like the idea of bringing your own drink because yeah, it's the moment you show up empty handed, people offer you drinks. I'm like, no, I'm not drinking. They're like, why? Are you okay? Like, yeah, I haven't drank in 3 months. I don't, doesn't do anything for me right now. I'd rather not. But so what would you say is your favorite go-to drink to bring?
Go to, I would say, is kin because it's just really easy. People tend to really love it. And now Hio, I love. I will say with Hio, you do have to order it ahead of time. Kin, I just have readily available in my neighborhood, so I can just pick it up on the way. Um, and then Sound. Sound technically is just the sparkling water, but I just add my tinctures to it, and it's like my absolute favorite, and I bring it everywhere.
Yeah. I'm been writing these down. I've started buying some of the ones that you posted on your stories that I've seen in stores, but I'm noticing that we're gonna just have to start ordering them online because I'm so curious to try them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's very few like non-alcoholic bottle shops. If you're in LA, there is Soft Spirits. One that was in Orange County, I think just closed down. I think it was called Bright Life. And then if you're in New York, they have Boisson. And so those are like, if you're in the area and you're in a pinch, like there's tons of options there. But for the rest of us, ordering online is like basically your best bet.
I'll have to look up the one in New York. I'm in New York City now, so
Oh,
at least there's
sweet.
one, hopefully.
Yeah, there is, I think, over 3 different locations of the Boisson one. So there's a ton. And there's actually like a large, sober, curious community out in New York. So I don't think you'll have any problem at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So one of the big themes on this show, and I know it's important to you too, is gut health. And so we're curious if there were any tinctures or any mocktails that you've made for holistic cocktails that specifically target supporting gut health.
Yes. So I would say anything with kombucha because it's fermented, or anything with collagen really helps. I would say it depends though, because if you have high histamine, then those things don't work. But at the end of the day, it just depends individually. But if you're talking on a more grander scale, you want to diversify your gut microbiome. And I think basically like a lot of the herbs and things that you can take will help with your gut microbiome because you want to diversify it as much as you can. But at the end of the day, I would say like, yeah, basically like anything like fermented really helps. There are some beauty drinks that have like collagen in it to help. And so I think those two are like the easiest things that you can add.
But
So what would you recommend for someone who has high histamine?
For high histamine, on like a non-holistic side for drinks, if you want to do like heal your gut, because for one, you typically have leaky gut because the gut lining is so thin or it has holes in it. Because I believe your gut lining is only one cell thick. So it's very easy to penetrate. And that's where we start getting like skin issues. That's where we start getting like intolerances to different foods. It's not because we're technically intolerant to it. It's because our gut microbiome, it's like seeping and it's coming out of our gut and not processing properly. And so I read this thing recently where if you make bone broth in a pressure cooker for only like less than 2 hours, then it'll extract enough collagen to actually make a difference, but it won't actually develop the high histamine that typically you get with like slow cooker bone broth. And so like I just made like a ton of bone broth because it helps with your gut microbiome. And I know everybody has different theories about how bone broth helps with your gut, but at the end of the day, like you need collagen in your system. And also like for your gut, like if you want to make smoothies or doing like frozen cocktails, if you're adding at least 30 different types of plant matter into your system, it'll help diversify as well.
I learned that tip from Organic Olivia.
Yeah, same.
Love that. And that's really helpful too, because I think bone broth is becoming, a health trend now. And I like to have it for breakfast to just start my day, get my system going with that. And I find that it really helps and it's soothing too.
Yeah, and like different things too is like how like your body reacts to certain things. And so like that's why I'm a huge advocate for like muscle testing. So it's like just because like one thing works for somebody doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Like we're so bio like individual. We're so unique. And so finding like what works for you specifically will help. But I would say like one thing I've learned first and foremost is like heal your gut, because your gut, they're saying, or I think there's a study now where it's like your gut has its own nervous system. So it's like you have your central nervous system, but also your gut has its own nervous system as well. And so if your gut is literally connected to everything, take care of it. And so also like just making sure like things that are harder for you to digest, like you try to omit them. I would say like adding a lot of like, I like to add like ashwagandha and rhodiola because it helps to mitigate like stress. That also helps to take off the stress on your gut.
Wow. Thank you. So it's funny you say muscle testing, because that I've been getting into that a lot. So I started started doing muscle testing over a month ago and been prescribed some supplements, and it's like all about healing the gut, because I have a lot of allergies, but I've also been developing a lot of intolerances. And I think just from years and years of buildup, like when we were talking about the alcohol earlier too, I'm like, college definitely did not help. That definitely made things 10 times worse. And now it's like the detoxing period, where going through healing all of the different things, whether it's the intolerances, the deficiencies, the any sort of like yeast or parasites or anything. I think that that's like, yeah, learning all this stuff through muscle testing. And it's so fascinating how everything is so individualized. Like when I'm asking him all these questions, he's like, well, it's different for everyone. It's like, anytime I get new products or something, he's like, bring it in to test it before you take it, before you put it on your skin, before you eat it, just to see how it's going to work with you. And it's just such a fascinating space that I'm learning about. So
yeah, and like one that I've recently started learning about, it's by Dr. Courtney Hunt. She is a like basically like a quantum like healer, I guess. Or like she basically like teaches about like how your body works in the quantum realm, or how it is affected by light. Because if you think about like, okay, so we have the physical, like things that you can see, the matter, the all the different things that like we can physically see, touch, feel. But then what about like if you think about smaller, like we thought a cell was small, we thought, you know, like an atom was small, and then we cut it in half, and then we realized that there's more stuff inside that. And so it's like, well, what if you cut that in half? And then it goes down into the quantum. And so that's more of like the energetic field of like things that like we sense, we feel, but we don't physically see. And so she talks about how to like eat well for your quantum cells. And so she's talking about like your mitochondria, how to like eat well. And so for her, she talks about eating keto. I know like people have different ideas about keto, but what she's talking about is like keto in the way of like making sure like your mitochondria is strong, and that your body is getting enough light or like sun energy to like fuel you basically. And so it's very interesting to see like it goes beyond just like the food, the things that we see, or like the things that we put on our body, but also like, are we getting enough sunlight for our body? Are we making sure that we're decalcifying our pineal gland? Things like that. And so there's a lot to it.
So interesting that you say that, because the next step in my healing journey has been doing quantum manifestations and theta healing. And we literally work on your third eye chakra, which is basically what you just said about your pineal gland. And so very interesting how it's all connected, and how, you know, people just don't think about how, you know, when they say you have a gut feeling, or how you were talking about muscle testing, or your intuition to gravitating towards products to use, like it's all interconnected. And sometimes people just, I think that sometimes when people take the absolute wrong supplements, it's because they're just not connected to their intuition, or they're in that state of just like, there's so much wrong that I can't figure out what will work best for me.
Yeah. If you look into the Silva method, that one is like a very interesting concept on like quantum and meditation. But I would say like the best way to heal is to understand your body, because if you don't, everybody else has an opinion on like, oh, this might work, this might work. But at the end of the day, like only you know, you live in your body, you know. And if you don't know your body, take the steps to know your body, because that's how you start understanding like what works and what doesn't. And it's like walking in the woods without a compass. You know, you're never going to find your way out if you don't understand how a compass works, or even how the sun works, right? You're going to get lost. And so like your body is the same way. Like everything is so interconnected. And that's why like holistic to me doesn't mean just healthy. It means everything is all interconnected, like through and through. It's just like Eastern medicine culture. Like they teach like, okay, if I look at your tongue, it's going to talk about, or your face, it's going to have different meridians that connect with like your pancreas, your liver, all these different things. But over here in the West, and I love Western medicine for some things, right? But when I go to the doctor and I tell them something is wrong with my liver, they're going to be like, oh, here's a prescription for that. Here's another one for that side effect. And then another one for the side effect that one gives you. And it's like they don't actually help. They give you a band-aid approach versus like if you want real root cause answers, you're gonna have to dig.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like a very important theme, because if you don't understand your body, and like Kath and I have both been experiencing it, like we're going through our own healing journeys, and everyone from friends to our family members are just like questioning, like, why don't you try this? Why don't you go back to this doctor? Like I keep getting that, well, why don't you stop it for a while? Like clearly it's not working for you. Or, and it's just like knowing your body and yourself, and like that you're on the right path is probably like one of the most important things to get you to where you want to be, I think.
Yeah. And I think too, I've recently come to an understanding like at the end of the day, the health journey is a lifelong journey. You know, at some point we have to like just sit and be like, okay, I give myself and my body grace for all the hardships that it's going through now. But at the end of the day, like I love where I'm at now, and I love where my body's at now, even with all the hardships. And I think that that's just important too. But I would say like too, it's like I've recently learned that you could, when you get to a certain like brain wave, you can actually like talk to your cells and like tell your cells like what to do. Like I was listening to somebody's testimony and they were talking about how they started doing like different meditations to be more interconnected with their body on a cellular level. And they used to have like really bad like seasonal allergies, and what they would do is they would, every time they would feel like a sneeze or just your sinuses like clogging up, she would talk to her cells and say like, my cells are fine, I am not allergic, I do not have seasonal allergies, like I am healed, I am fine. And after that she's never had seasonal allergies again. And that goes more onto like the quantum level of like how our bodies work energetically and with thought, which is why Dr. Caroline Leaf is so interesting versus on like a physical level, like, oh, take this herb, take this supplement. And yes, those are super important, but it's just like, you know, like a painting, like you have like different layers to it, you know, to make the whole picture work. And so that's why like herbs and supplements and, you know, like what you add to your body, it helps on a mass scale, but on a granular scale, that's when you want to get into like the energetics.
That's so interesting. I've heard of people like utilizing that as like one part of their like cancer healing journeys. Like one part is like talking to their tumor and being like, you're shrinking, or I'm okay, and all that stuff. And I've heard, along with other treatments that they were doing, that was like also a contributing factor, because their body started to believe that that was true, and it just, was a snowball effect. So that's really cool that you could do that for smaller scale things, or whatever is ailing you.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like with Joe Dispenza. His story was I think he was in like a really bad accident. He was like an athlete, I believe. Was in like a really bad accident, was basically like paralyzed, told him that he'd never walk again. And basically he used thought and meditation to heal. And I think he was like out within like less than a year or something like that. I don't remember the specifics, but if you look up his story, it's very fascinating. And now he talks about like everything quantum of like how you talk to your body, how you talk to yourself, like what is your thought process like being very active and understanding like what are the thoughts and what is your subconscious always saying, because we can dictate our conscious thoughts, but it's our subconscious thoughts that also say a lot, whether we realize it or not.
Oh, 100%. And I would love to, bring this full circle, because I know people have a lot of subconscious thoughts. You brought this up in your own story of like people pleasing and, wanting to have a drink, even if it's one sip, and to pass it to somebody else, to, just because they're like, oh, I don't want to be judged, or I want to fit in, or I just want to have fun, whatever their subconscious is saying. So I'm curious, as we start to wrap up our conversation, if you could just give like a few reasons why like going alcohol free or just starting to limit your alcohol and substituting with some of your amazing holistic cocktails is beneficial either for, mental health, physical health, whatever.
Yeah, I would say all in all, like we've talked about towards the end of this, is like your mental health. Your mental health dictates a lot. Like you could be the healthiest person in the world physically, but if you're not taking care of your mental health, you could still get cancer. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what organic food you're eating, wearing, whatever. If your mental health is not good, you're going to have health issues for the rest of your life. And so alcohol, it disrupts your central nervous system, and it also disrupts the connection between your gut and your brain. And so if you take alcohol, or if you drink regularly, it will disrupt how your brain functions basically. And so if you want to work on your mental health, I would say that finding alternatives to help boost your mental health is important. And like I said, like the different supplements, like the blends of mood juice, of peach juice, of, or even like an adrenal cocktail. I think I have one on my feed that I really love, and it'll help like boost your adrenals and like calm your stress and your cortisol levels. And that's another thing, is like alcohol will spike your cortisol, which is your stress response. And so finding alternatives that is like soothing for you. And I think in the States, CBD is legal in all 50 states. And so with CBD, what it does is that it combats inflammation. And so stress typically is inflammation. And so even adding like CBD to like combat the inflammation from the stress in your body will help. And so I would say, like, if you're drinking, like drink mindfully, like find healthier alternatives, like just limit yourself. Don't drink to get plastered, drink to be social and enjoy. And if you're not drinking, which is great, like find something that'll, get you on like a same level, and like adding supplements or herbs that will give you that body buzz that, like we enjoy. And even if it doesn't give you like the exact feeling that you're looking for, at least at the end of the day, it's helping you short and long term. It's helping your hormones, it's helping your stress, it's helping like the conversations that you have in your head. And not only that, like you feel good about yourself. Like, I'm doing something great for me, regardless of what other people think. And I'm going to feel great tomorrow, whereas everyone's going to wake up not great tomorrow.
Yeah, I think I definitely resonate with a lot of that. And I think that that's very, very helpful. So I know that we are close to our time. This conversation went by so quickly. There's a few last questions we want to ask you, rapid fire. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's starting their health journey today?
Take it one step at a time. There's so much, and it is a wormhole. So just start with one area, and once you feel like you've dictated that area, move on to the next.
So helpful. And I think that that's a little bit manageable for everyone, especially, I mean, you have given so many good pieces of advice in so many different facets of our life, from mental health to, linens and towels, to clean beauty, to tinctures and food. Like, you have given people so much. So for our listeners, start with whatever seems doable for you right now, and then listen to this episode a bunch of times until you feel good in all those areas.
Well, like I said, it's been like it's a long journey, and still like I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and there's still areas that need help.
Absolutely. Our next question is, what do you think the future of health looks like?
I want to be positive, so I'm going to say positive things. I think it's going to be people wanting to understand for the first time, versus like I feel like our parents were raised on like blind trust. like, oh, just take this. And they do. And they don't understand it. They don't research it. They don't know anything about it. They just do because they trust the person that recommended it. Versus now, I think that more people are like, well, why? Why should I take that? What does it do? What are the side effects? Is it going to help me? Like, how does my body feel when I take it? And I think that that's where like people are understanding and like being more aware of like, what does the like cause and effect of this actually, like, how is it going to make a difference for me individually versus like how other people deal with it.
So helpful and so important for people to take ownership of their health and start asking those questions for sure. And our last question is, since this is connecting the dots, can you tell us how our listeners can connect with you and where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on Instagram, TikTok, all the social medias, and it's all under Holistic Cocktails. And then my website is holisticcocktails.com.
Amazing. And everyone needs to check it out. Before our conversation, Melissa and I were just raving about how much we love the look of all your videos and how you put the tinctures and the cocktails together and the picture you have and the names. Like, you have it going on.
Thank you.
Really?
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us and giving so much advice on a wide range of health topics. I know our listeners are going to be really excited to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And I can't wait to hear about how people are resonating with this episode.
Awesome.